What if I told you that most negotiations are decided before the first offer is ever made? Not in the conference room, not at the bargaining table, but in the seconds before anyone speaks, in the psychological architecture of the conversation itself. The anchor's already set, the emotional tone already established, the social influence already quietly at work. Most people spend their entire lives believing negotiation is a logical process, a back and forth of numbers and arguments, a battle of facts. But the science of human psychology tells a completely different story. The reality is that every negotiation, every single one, is an emotional event dressed up as a rational one. The person who understands behavioral psychology, who can read body language, manage emotional control under pressure, and recognize manipulation before it takes hold, doesn't he just negotiate better? They move through the world differently. They make better decisions. They build stronger relationships. They stop being moved by forces they can see because they've finally learned to see them. This video is your introduction to that world. Not the world of tricks and tactics, but the deeper world of psychological awareness that changes how you understand every conversation you'll ever have. Think about the last time you saw a product on sale, originally $500, now $199. Did you feel like you were getting a deal? That ace anchoring at work. The first number your brain receives becomes the reference point for everything that follows. It doesn't matter if that original price was real or not. Your mind has already locked onto it, and every comparison flows from there. This is one of the most powerful tools in negotiation psychology, and most people fall for it without even realizing it. The moment you walk into any negotiation, whether it's a salary discussion, a business deal, or even a casual trade, whoever drops the first number holds cognitive influence over the entire conversation. Smart negotiators don't wait to react. They anchor first, they anchor boldly, and they anchor with confidence. The perception of value is rarely about what something is actually worth. It says about what number the brain was introduced to first. And once that mental reference is set, it is incredibly hard to shake. There's a reason you feel instantly comfortable around certain people, and it has nothing to do with luck or chemistry. It's mirroring. When someone subtly matches your body language, your tone of voice, your pace of speech, your brain interprets that familiarity as safety. It is a deeply wired psychological response. The mind sees similarity and translates it as, this person is like me, therefore I can trust them. This is social psychology operating completely below the level of conscious thought. The practical power of mirroring in strategic communication is almost unfair. A simple technique used by top negotiators and FBI hostage agents alike: repeat the last 3 words someone just said in a slightly softer tone, and then go quiet. Watch what happens. The other person feels heard, understood, and unconsciously drawn toward you. That unconscious connection creates rapport faster than any rehearsed compliment ever could. It's not manipulation, it's understanding how the human brain builds trust and choosing to work with it intentionally. Here's something most people never learn. Silence is a weapon, and the person who's most comfortable with it usually wins. The moment you make an offer, ask a question, or state your position, the instinct is to keep talking, to fill the air, to explain yourself. But every word you add after your point is made is a concession you didn't have to give. Social discomfort kicks in, anxiety rises, and suddenly you're negotiating against yourself. That emotional self-control, the ability to simply stop talking, is one of the rarest and most powerful skills in any negotiation. The psychological pressure created by silence is almost physical. When you stay quiet after making a demand, the other person's brain scrambles to resolve the tension. They start talking, they start justifying, they start offering things you never even asked for. FBI negotiators, elite sales professionals, experienced lawyers, they all know this principle well. Silence isn't awkward when you're the one who chose it. It is dominance. It is patience. And in the psychology of high-stakes conversations, Whoever breaks the silence first usually gives something away without even knowing it. Imagine you ask for a price, and the other person winces eyebrows up, a sharp inhale, maybe a slow headshake. You haven't heard a single word yet, but something already shifted inside you. That's the flinch, and it is one of the oldest, most effective tools in social influence. The brain is wired to interpret strong emotional reactions as meaningful signals. If someone reacts that dramatically, maybe the offer really was unreasonable. Doubt creeps in, and doubt in a negotiation is everything. The beauty of the flinch is how disarmingly simple it is. No arguments, no data, no counteroffer, needed just a visible, instinctive-looking reaction to what was just proposed. It works because behavioral psychology tells us that emotions are contagious. We unconsciously mirror the feelings of those around us, and when someone projects shock, we absorb a fraction of that shock ourselves. Used with awareness, the flinch isn't dishonesty, it's body language as a negotiation tool, a way of communicating you will need to do better than that without ever having to say it out loud. You've seen it in every crime drama ever made. One detective screams, threatens, and pushes hard, while the other offers coffee and speaks softly. It looks like a cliché, but it works because it is built on something deeply real, psychological contrast. When the brain is exposed to intense pressure and then suddenly offered relief, it doesn't just feel neutral, it feels grateful. That gratitude creates an emotional bond with whoever reduced the tension, and that bond makes people cooperative, open, and surprisingly willing to give information they never planned to share. In everyday negotiation tactics, this dynamic plays out far more subtly than two detectives in a grey room. A business partner who plays hardball in the morning and then comes around by afternoon. A manager who pushes back firmly in a meeting and then privately offers a gentler path forward. The psychological manipulation here isn't always intentional, but it is always effective. Understanding this pattern protects you from being unconsciously steered toward decisions that feel like relief, but are actually concessions. When someone suddenly becomes your ally after someone else applied pressure, pause. Ask yourself, is this safety or is this a setup? Someone walks up to you and asks for a 10,000 favor. You say no, obviously. Then they come back and ask for 500. Suddenly, 500 feels almost reasonable. Nothing about that number changed. Your financial situation didn't change, but your perception did, because the brain doesn't evaluate proposals in isolation, it compares them. That's the door-in-the-face technique, and it's one of the most elegant examples of psychological contrast in action. The first request wasn't meant to succeed. It was meant to make the second one land softly. This principle shows up everywhere once you start recognizing it, in sales, in politics, in relationships, in everyday conversations. Someone asks for way more than they need, fully expecting the refusal, because that refusal sets up the real ask. Reciprocity plays a role here too. When someone appears to back down from their original demand, the brain registers that as a concession and feels a quiet social pressure to meet them halfway. Understanding social engineering at this level doesn't make you cynical, it makes you conscious. And consciousness, in any negotiation, is the beginning of real power. There's a version of you that walks into every negotiation calm, unbothered, and completely in control. And that version exists the moment you have a real alternative. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement, and it is not just a strategy concept. It is a psychological state. When you know you can walk away and be fine, your entire energy shifts. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop accepting terms that don't serve you. And paradoxically, that detachment makes you more persuasive, not less, because people are drawn to those who don't need them. Emotional independence is the most underrated form of power in any negotiation. Desperation has a smell, and the other side always picks up on it. The moment your need becomes visible, your leverage disappears. This is why experienced negotiators spend as much time building their alternatives as they do preparing their arguments. The goal isn't to be indifferent, it is to be genuinely unattached to a single outcome. When you have options, you negotiate from confidence. And confidence, in the psychology of human behavior, is one of the most convincing forces in any room. The deal is done. Hands are practically being shaken. Everyone is relieved, relaxed, and already mentally moving on. And that exactly the moment the nibble happens. Just one small thing. And because the brain has already committed, already celebrated the agreement, already closed the mental file on conflict, it will do almost anything to avoid reopening it. That decision fatigue meeting, compliance psychology, and it has a devastatingly effective combination. The nibble isn't asked at the beginning of a negotiation for a reason it's saved for the finish line. What makes the nibble so powerful is how genuinely innocent it appears. A small discount here, an extra included service there, a slightly extended deadline, none of it feels worth fighting over after a long negotiation. But those small things add up, and skilled negotiators know it. The defense against this kind of subtle manipulation is simple, but requires real emotional control. Recognize that the deal isn't done until it is actually done, and that your mental exhaustion at the end of a negotiation is itself a vulnerability. Stay sharp at the finish line, because that's precisely when the other side is counting on you not to be. This offer expires at midnight. We need your answer by end of day. After this, the deal is off the table. Sound familiar? The ultimatum is one of the oldest psychological pressure tools in existence, and it works because the brain is neurologically wired to respond to scarcity and the fear of loss far more intensely than to the possibility of gain. Neuroscience calls it loss aversion, and it sees not a weakness, it is just how human cognition is built. The moment a deadline enters the conversation, rational thinking starts to shrink and emotional decision-making takes over. The dangerous thing about ultimatums isn't that they are always fake, sometimes they are real, and you do need to decide. The dangerous thing is that urgency and pressure feel identical to your nervous system, even when they're completely different things. Real urgency is a fact. Pressure is a tactic. Learning to pause even for a few seconds and ask yourself, is this deadline real or manufactured, can be the difference between a smart decision and a regrettable one. Emotional intelligence in negotiation isn't about being slow, it's about being deliberate, exactly when everything around you is pushing you to rush. Here's a rule that separates amateur negotiators from masterful ones: never give a concession, trade it. The moment you offer something for free, you've done two damaging things at once. You've reduced the perceived value of what you just gave, and you've signaled that you had room to move all along. In the psychology of perceived value, the brain doesn't measure worth in absolute terms, it measures it in cost. What comes easily is valued lightly. What requires an exchange is treated as significant. Free concessions don't build goodwill, they build appetite for more. The practical shift is simple but powerful. Instead of saying, "I can do that for you," say, "I can do that if you can meet me on this." Every movement you make in a negotiation should cost the other side something, even if it's small. This isn't about being difficult. It's about psychological reciprocity and maintaining the integrity of the exchange. When both sides feel they've worked for what they got, the agreement holds stronger, and both parties leave with a sense of fairness. Behavioral psychology consistently shows that people protect what they've earned far more than what they've simply received. Trade, never give. Before you've said a single word, the room has already formed an impression of you. Your posture, your eye contact, the way you walk in, the space you choose to occupy, all of it is being processed by every brain in that room at a speed language simply can't match. Nonverbal communication accounts for a staggering portion of how we re-perceived, and in high-stakes negotiations, that silent first impression can set the entire emotional tone of what follows. You can have the perfect argument prepared and lose the room before you open your mouth simply because your body told a different story. The good news is that body language is a skill, not a personality trait. Sustained but relaxed eye contact signals confidence without aggression. An open posture, uncrossed arms, shoulders back, feet grounded communicates security and presence. Leaning in slightly when someone speaks shows genuine engagement, which builds the kind of unconscious connection that makes people want to cooperate with you. Elite negotiators, top executives, and natural leaders all share one thing they've learned: to make their physical presence work for them before their strategic communication even begins. Your body is always talking. The only question is whether you are directing the conversation. Picture two people in a tense negotiation. One is visibly frustrated, voice rising, jaw tight, responses getting faster and sharper. The other is calm, measured, almost unnervingly still. Who do you think is winning? Emotional control isn't just a nice personality trait in the psychology of negotiation. It's a tactical advantage. When you react emotionally, you reveal your priorities, your pressure points, and your limits. You hand the other side a map of exactly where to push. And they will push, whether consciously or not, because behavioral psychology tells us that humans instinctively probe for emotional reactions. The hardest part is staying calm when things are going well. It is maintaining psychological composure when someone is deliberately testing your patience. A low offer, a dismissive tone, a manufactured deadline. These are often designed to provoke a reaction because a reactive person is a predictable person, and a predictable person is easy to steer. Intelligentsia emotional. The ability to feel the pressure without being controlled by it is what separates those who negotiate and those who truly master it. The goal isn't to feel nothing. It's to feel everything and still choose your response deliberately, calmly, and with complete emotional intelligence intact. There's a line between persuasion and manipulation, and the difference isn't always obvious in the moment. Persuasion respects your ability to choose. Manipulation bypasses it. When someone creates artificial urgency, exaggerates consequences, exploits your insecurities, or uses emotional pressure to cloud your judgment, they're not negotiating with you. They're engineering your decision for you. Understanding dark psychology isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about developing the awareness to recognize when a conversation has stopped being an exchange and started being a trap. Some of the most common manipulation tactics are hiding in plain sight. Gaslighting, making you doubt your own perception of events. False scarcity. This is the last one available when it isn't. Social proof pressure. Everyone else has already agreed. Guilt framing, making you feel unreasonable for holding your position. These are textbook social engineering techniques, and they work precisely because they feel like normal conversation. The antidote isn't aggression. It's psychological awareness combined with the calm ability to slow down. Name what's happening internally and ask yourself, am I making this decision? Or is this decision being made for me? That question alone can change everything. Most people associate negotiation with boardrooms, contracts, and high-stakes business deals. But the truth is far more intimate than that. Every time you convince a friend to change plans, navigate a disagreement with your partner, pitch an idea to your team, or even decide which restaurant to go to, you are negotiating. Social influence is woven into the fabric of every human interaction, and the principles of persuasion psychology don't clock out when the workday ends. They're running quietly in the background of your relationships, your conversations, and even the way you present yourself on social media. The modern world has actually made negotiation more complex, not simpler. Digital communication strips away body language and tone, leaving enormous room for misinterpretation and psychological pressure that is harder to detect through a screen. Algorithms on social platforms are built on principles of behavioral psychology engineered to influence your attention, your desires, and your decisions at scale. Understanding human psychology in this context isn't optional anymore. It's a form of literacy. The people who thrive in modern professional and personal landscapes aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who understand how influence works and choose to engage with it consciously, deliberately, and ethically. Here's the paradox at the heart of everything. We've recovered the most effective negotiators don't look like they're negotiating at all. There's no visible pressure, no dramatic tactics, no sense of a game being played. What you see instead is genuine curiosity, real listening, and a quality of social intelligence that makes the other person feel understood rather than outmaneuvered. The best deals don't feel like victories. They feel like conversations that simply arrived at the right place. That's not an accident. That's the result of someone who has internalized human psychology deeply enough to make it invisible. The deepest truth about negotiation is that it was never really about winning. It was always about perception, connection, and understanding what the other person actually needs, sometimes better than they understand it themselves. Every technique in this video is just a window into human behavior, how people think, what they fear, what makes them trust, what makes them resistant. When you stop trying to defeat the person across from you and start trying to genuinely understand them, something shifts. The psychological pressure dissolves. The conversation opens, and almost without trying, you find yourself arriving at outcomes that feel good for everyone, which in the end is the only kind of agreement that actually lasts. We've covered a lot of ground together, from the invisible pull of anchoring to the quiet dominance of silence, from the psychology of body language to the emotional traps hidden inside ultimatums and manipulation tactics. But here is what I want you to sit with after this video ends. None of this knowledge means anything unless you start applying it. Not in some distant future negotiation, but today. In your next conversation, in the next moment, someone applies pressure and you feel the urge to react. That is where everything you've learned either becomes real or stays theoretical. So ask yourself honestly, how many decisions in your life were shaped by psychological influence you didn't recognize at the time? How many times did you confuse manufactured urgency with real necessity? How many conversations were actually negotiations you didn't know you were in? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're the right ones. Because self-awareness is where real power begins, not the power to control others, but the power to finally understand what's happening around you and choose your response with intention, clarity, and emotional intelligence. The goal was never to turn you into a manipulator. It was to make sure you never become an unconscious victim of one. Understanding human psychology is one of the most protective, empowering things you can do for yourself in business, in relationships, and in every corner of your daily life. If this video opened your eyes even a little, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And there's so much more where this came from every week on this channel. We go deeper into the psychology of human behavior, influence, and the invisible forces that shape your decisions. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and come back for more. The game is already being played. You might as well learn the rules.